So this is a most commonly used in spirituality, comes from the Buddhist usage of the term, which I'll talk about in a minute. But in common everyday language, the word is also used in a way that is maybe helpful in the way we're going to look at it. So one way the word is used is in when we create a wildlife refuge, a place where animals or birds can live in relatively safe environment, having basic needs met, relative level of protection, of safety, right? So that's one use of the term. Another use of the term might be, if a sailor's, out on a rough sea and looking to get out of a storm, they can be looking for a safe harbor, taking refuge in a bay or a cove, and protection from the storm, taking refuge in a place of safety. And another way it's used, a term that we've heard a lot about lately, is when people become refugees to escape, political turmoil, war zones, willing to leave home in search of a place of greater safety. So all of these three examples, from common everyday language, have in common is that they all have to do with a change of location, right? Moving from where I might be to someplace safer. And that, on a physical safety level, that makes total sense. Right? But if we're seeking something a little bit deeper than that, then just changing our physical location doesn't really solve the problem ultimately. Because if we've ever done that, whether we've, changed our location or changed our name or changed our clothing or diet or religious beliefs or all of those sort of exterior kinds of changes, what we find out soon enough is that we take our personality with us. We take our conditioning with us. It might, we can move to a cave in the Himalayas and we'll find out sooner or later that those same thought patterns that were so problematic when we were in the workaday world, may still be appearing, in some similar form. So we can move physical locations or change the exterior circumstances and not really solve the problem. By solve the problem, I just mean dealing with the underlying issues that cause us to suffer. Right? So just changing locations or changing some exterior circumstances, sort of like weeding your garden just by pulling all the tops off and leaving the roots. It doesn't really get to the heart of the issue. So in Buddhism, they suggest three related ways to take refuge. Take refuge from the storm. Take refuge from suffering. And those three ways are Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So these are all Sanskrit words, of course. Buddha doesn't actually refer specifically to the historical person. It really refers more to taking refuge in the inspiration of someone who has found for themselves liberation from suffering, and that being an inspiration to that possibility of realizing that same liberation ourselves. Right? So it's not just a person; it's the whole possibility of enlightenment, liberation. So the second term is Dharma, which means, very simply, it means teaching, the teaching, the scriptures, and using that as the basis for learning more and more about ourselves. And the third term is Sangha, which just means a community of dedicated seekers that we can have some degree of support from. Okay, so the inspiration for enlightenment, the teaching, the path to get there, and the support of an engaged community. Okay, beautiful. But in terms of finding refuge there, these, by the way, are called the three jewels in Buddhism. But in terms of finding refuge there, we might find, as we try to do that, that there's as many considerations in just those three terms as they are in ordinary life, trying to figure that out. The idea of an enlightened being finding liberation can be inspiring, or it can sound, from some of the descriptions of that process in his life, it might sound almost otherworldly, not really possible for me as an ordinary human. And the teachings themselves are, there's volumes upon volumes, and then there's commentaries upon the scriptures over, several thousand years now. And, they're not all immediately obvious, and different movements within the Buddhist tradition can be quite different. Hinayana from Mahayana, Theravada from Zen, Tibetan Buddhism, there can be, quite significant differences. So who do you trust? Which one is right? Which one is better? Is the greater vehicle better than the lesser vehicle? All kinds of questions can arise. And then the idea of having the support of a community, that can be beautiful. And it can also be challenging too, to live in community with others. And, people have their opinions about, the right way to do it and the right approach, etc. So if we really take this Buddhist concept, which is how taking refuge is often most commonly used in spirituality, if we take that as the path, it's really more the path towards something rather than the place of refuge itself. Right? It may be comforting, to be in a community of fellow seekers, with a long tradition of scripture and a inspirational founder. That can all be very comforting, but being comforting and being in recognition of our true nature as a place of refuge are two different things. So we can acknowledge that as a valid path. It's been used for thousands of years for probably millions of people, not always successfully, but it's been a remarkable tradition over a long period of time. But what I'd like to talk about it in a different way tonight, in terms of taking refuge, and that is taking refuge in something that is immediately available to all of us.